The world is a vast, suffocating expanse of white, a cathedral of ice stretching from the northern pole to the heart of the continents. It is the Pleistocene, a geological epoch defined not by the warmth of the sun but by the crushing weight of the glaciers. The wind is a constant screaming presence, a physical force that scours the granite bedrock and strips the moisture from the air, leaving a dry, frozen desert in its wake. There is no mercy in this landscape, no forgiveness for the weak or the slow. It is a planetary engine designed to test the limits of biological endurance, where the temperature plunges so low that breath turns instantly to ice crystals hanging in the air like suspended dust. In this frozen void, the landscape is dominated by silence, a heavy, oppressive quiet that swallows the sound of shifting tectonic plates and the cracking of ancient ice. The mountains are not merely stone. They are buried beneath mile-thick sheets of frozen water, locking away the Earth's history and its future. The sun is a pale, distant disk, a heatless eye that watches over the tundra without offering comfort, casting long blue shadows that stretch across the snowfields like the fingers of a starving giant. To exist here is to be in a constant state of defiance against the laws of thermodynamics, which dictate that all things must eventually cool to match the ambient void. Yet in the lee of a basalt ridge sheltered from the biting northerly gales, there is a scar in the earth, a shallow, dark cave mouth that breathes a faint rhythmic plume of steam into the twilight. This is not merely a geological formation. It is a fortress of biology, a desperate pocket of warmth in a universe of cold. Inside, the darkness is thick with the scent of wood smoke, curing hides, and the musk of unwashed bodies, a sharp organic contrast to the sterile purity of the ice outside. Here, huddled against the rough stone walls, lies a singular organism, a tangled mass of limbs and furs that breathes as one moving slightly to circulate the precious heat generated by their metabolisms. This is the tribe, a small, isolated cluster of hominids clinging to the edge of survival with a tenacity that defies the odds of their era. They are not the masters of this world. They are scavengers, wanderers, and opportunists living in the shadow of beasts 10 times their size. But within the center of this huddled mass, protected by the thickest furs and the warmest bodies, lies the reason for their struggle, the biological imperative that drives every action they take. It is a sound, soft and mewling rising from a bundle of dried grasses and wolfskins, the cry of a human infant, the most fragile object on the entire face of the earth. The human child is a biological paradox, an evolutionary gamble that sacrificed physical readiness for the potential of the mind. Unlike the foal of the horse or the calf of the bison, which can stand and run within hours of birth, the human infant is born premature by the standards of the animal kingdom, helpless and unformed. Its skull is soft, its muscles are useless, and its vision is blurred. It is a creature that cannot cling, cannot feed itself, and cannot regulate its own body temperature. It is a caloric drain, a loud, defenseless beacon that demands constant energy from a group that has none to spare. Yet it is the center of their universe. To defend this helpless being, the tribe has evolved a social structure that functions like a living shield, a concentric defense mechanism where every member has a role defined by their distance from the child. The mothers are the core, their bodies acting as living radiators, their skin touching the infant's skin to transfer thermal energy directly bypassing the inefficiency of the air. They exist in a state of semi-hibernation, conserving every calorie to produce milk, the white gold that transforms the tribe's scarce food into the raw materials of growth. Their eyes are constantly downcast, scanning the infant for signs of distress, their ears tuned to the frequency of its breath, filtering out the howling wind outside to hear the heartbeat of the future. Surrounding the mothers are the older siblings and the elders, those whose physical prime has passed or has not yet arrived, forming the second layer of insulation. They are the keepers of the fire, the small flickering deity that must never be allowed to die, for its death means the death of the child. They feed the flames with dried dung bones and twisted scrubwood, their hands callous and blackened, moving with a reverence that borders on the religious. They are the barrier between the tender skin of the newborn and the rough, cold stone of the cave, their bodies acting as soft mattresses and windbreaks, absorbing the drafts that sneak through the cracks in the rock. On the outermost perimeter near the mouth of the cave, where the temperature drops and the light fades into grey, sit the sentries, the adult males and the strongest females. They are the hard shell of the organism, their backs turned to the warmth, their eyes fixed on the white horizon. They do not sleep. They wait, their muscles tense under layers of scavenged fur. Their hands gripping spears made of fire-hardened wood and chipped flint. They are the first line of defense, the expendable layer that must engage the threat before it can reach the soft center, and they bear the scars of previous winters on their skin like maps of their endurance. The environment outside the cave is not empty. It is teeming with megafauna, colossal beasts that have adapted perfectly to the cold that kills men. Woolly mammoths, vast mountains of muscle and hair, plow through the snowdrifts in search of dried grasses. Their tusks like curved scythes that can sweep a human aside with casual indifference. Herds of bison thunder across the plains, their hooves churning the ice, their breath creating fog banks that roll over the tundra. These are not enemies in the traditional sense. They are forces of nature, indifferent to the presence of the apes in the cave, but their sheer size makes them a constant existential threat to the fragile human sanctuary. However, there are others who are not indifferent predators whose evolution has honed them into perfect killing machines for this specific ecosystem. The cave lion, silent and massive, stalks the ridgelines, its white coat blending seamlessly with the snow, its eyes capable of piercing the gloom of the Arctic night. The dire wolf hunting in packs with a coordination that rivals the human's tests, the wind for the scent of weakness, for the metallic tang of blood, or the sweet, milky smell of a newborn. To these predators, the human infant is not a future nor a legacy. It is simply a high-calorie packet of protein, easy to kill and soft to eat, protected only by a few shivering apes with pointed sticks. As the days bleed into nights, the resources within the sanctuary begin to dwindle, the natural consequence of a stationary population in a barren land. The pile of bones used for fuel grows smaller, the dried strips of meat become tough and scarce, and the milk in the mother's breasts begins to thin. The infant cries more often now, a sharp, hungry sound that echoes off the cave walls and drifts out into the wind, a dinner bell for every predator within a 5-mile radius. The tension in the cave rises, a palpable electric current of fear that jumps from one adult to another, spoken not in words, but in the tightening of jaws and the restless shifting of bodies. The biology of starvation begins to take hold, a slow creeping lethargy that dulls the senses and cools the blood. The adults move slower, their movements economical and deliberate, conserving the last reserves of glycogen in their muscles. They sleep more, drifting into torpor, but the infant cannot sleep. Its metabolism is a furnace that demands fuel, and its cries become a frantic, jagged rhythm that tears at the nerves of the tribe. The sentries at the cave mouth look inward, their eyes hollow, seeing the desperation in the faces of the mothers, knowing that the safety of the cave has become a trap, a slow tomb that will claim them all if they do not move. Then the wind shifts, bringing with it a scent that cuts through the smell of smoke and sickness, a musky, urine-soaked odor that prickles the hair on the back of the neck. The sentries stiffen their nostrils, flaring as they taste the air, recognizing the chemical signature of a rival pack. It is the hyaenodon, or perhaps the giant short-faced bear. The specific taxonomy matters less than the intent. The predators have found them. They are circling invisible in the driving snow, testing the perimeter, waiting for the fire to die, waiting for the cold to do their work for them. The sanctuary is no longer a fortress. It is a cage, and the bars are closing in. A silent communication passes through the tribe, a consensus reached without a council or a debate, driven by the primitive logic of survival. To stay is to be besieged and eaten. To leave is to risk the open ice, but it offers the only chance of reaching the hunting grounds in the valley below. The decision is made heavy and absolute. The mothers begin to wrap the infant not just in furs, but in layers of leather and woven grass, creating a cocoon that will trap every ounce of heat. They bind the bundle to their chests, facing inward, shielding the child's face from the wind, with their own bodies becoming human shields in the most literal sense. The sentries extinguish the fire, burying the embers in a hollow horn to carry the seed of warmth with them, a precious cargo second only to the child. The cave plunges into darkness, the sudden cold biting into their skin, a reminder of what awaits them outside. They check their weapons, tightening the sinew bindings on their spearheads, testing the balance of their stone axes. There is no bravado, no war cry. There is only the grim, silent determination of a species that refuses to go quietly into the extinction that awaits so many others. They are the guardians of the spark, and they will carry it through the storm or die in the attempt. They step out of the cave, one by one, emerging from the womb of the earth, into the blinding white glare of the Ice Age. The wind hits them like a physical blow, staggering the lead male, forcing him to lean into the gale to keep his footing. The snow is knee-deep, a treacherous powder that hides fissures and loose rocks, demanding that every step be tested before weight is committed. They form a tight collar, the mothers and children in the center, the males surrounding them, their eyes scanning the horizon for the movement of shadows. The infant is silent, now rocked by the rhythm of the walk, unaware that its life hangs by a thread over a precipice of ice. The landscape they enter is alien and hostile, a vast indifference of geology that cares nothing for their plight. The glaciers loom above them, blue-white cliffs that creak and groan, shedding blocks of ice the size of houses that shatter on the valley floor. The sky is a bruised purple. The sun, a weak lantern that offers no heat, only a harsh, flat light that eliminates depth perception. Every breath is a battle, the cold air burning their lungs, crystallizing the moisture in their noses, freezing the sweat on their brows before it can drip. This is the crucible of their time, the great filter that separates the enduring from the forgotten. As they move further from the safety of the rocks, the isolation becomes absolute. There are no trees to climb, no caves to hide in, only the endless flat expanse of the tundra. They are exposed, vulnerable, a tiny dark smudge moving across a canvas of white. The tracks they leave behind are deep and distinct, a trail of scent and disturbance that radiates out into the wilderness, broadcasting their position to everything that hunts. The wind carries their scent downwind towards the unseen eyes that watch them leave the cave eyes that are now narrowing in anticipation of the chase. The tribe moves with a singular purpose, their pace dictated by the slowest member, their formation unbroken by the gusts that threaten to tear them apart. They are not just walking, they are engaged in an act of defiance, a refusal to accept the verdict of the geological era. They carry the child not as a burden, but as a banner, a declaration that life will persist in spite of the ice. But as the first hour of the march ends and the cave disappears into the whiteout behind them, a low guttural growl rolls across the snow, a sound that vibrates in their chests and stops the column in its tracks. The hunt has begun. The procession moves across the tundra like a dark fluid scar upon the pristine face of the ice. They have left the sanctuary of the basalt ridge far behind, entering a realm where the horizon is a seamless weld of white earth and grey sky. Here, the scale of the world expands to terrifying proportions. The humans are reduced to insignificant specks, microscopic anomalies in a geological epoch that creates glaciers the size of continents. The wind is no longer broken by rock or tree. It sweeps across the plains with the momentum of 1,000 miles, stripping the heat from their bodies with the efficiency of a blade searching for any gap in their furs to insert its freezing needle. The tribe moves in a formation that is as ancient as their lineage, a structure dictated not by conscious strategy but by the brutal trial and error of natural selection. It is a biological cell moving through a hostile medium. The nucleus consists of the mothers and the infants, the genetic future of the species wrapped in the thickest layers of scavenged mammoth hide. Surrounding them is the cytoplasm of the tribe, the adolescents and the elders who carry the heavy loads of dried meat and the precious embers of the fire. On the outer membrane are the adult males, the protectors walking with a jagged halting rhythm as they constantly scan the blinding whiteness for movement. Every step is a calculation of energy expenditure against the terrain's resistance. The snow here is wind-packed and hard crusted over with a layer of ice that shatters underfoot, threatening to twist ankles or slice through leather foot wrappings. The humans walk in each other's footprints, the leader breaking the crust, the followers stepping into the broken ground to conserve the calories that would be wasted in forging a new path. It is a silent, rhythmic trudge, the only sound the crunch of frozen snow and the heavy, vaporous breathing of 20 individuals laboring in the thin, cold air. Inside the protective circle, the infants are oblivious to the vastness of the landscape that threatens to swallow them. They are bound tight against their mothers' chests, their ears pressed against the steady thump of a heartbeat, a sound that mimics the safety of the womb. The mothers walk with a distinct gait, a shuffling glide designed to minimize the jostling of their burden, their heads bowed against the wind. They are burning their own fat reserves at an accelerated rate, their bodies prioritizing the production of heat for the child over the maintenance of their own extremities. Frostbite blackens the tips of their fingers, a willing sacrifice for the warmth of the bundle they carry. But they are not alone in this white desolation. Shadowing them parallel to their course but hidden by the rolling contours of the snowdrifts is a creature perfectly engineered for this environment. It is the Homotherium, the scimitar-toothed cat, a predator distinct from the ambush-hunting cats of the jungle. It is built for endurance with a sloping back and long, powerful front legs that allow it to lope for hours without fatigue. Its coat is a mottled grey-white, a camouflage so perfect that it becomes invisible when it stands still, a phantom existing only in the movement of the wind. The cat does not attack immediately. It is an intelligent hunter wary of the upright apes and their stinging wooden thorns. It observes the column with pale yellow eyes, measuring the speed of the group, identifying the limping elder, the pregnant female, the straggler who pauses too long to adjust a strap. It is assessing the structural integrity of the formation, looking for the weak link that will allow it to break the circle without risking injury to itself. In the Pleistocene, an injury is a death sentence. A broken bone means starvation, so the predator calculates the risk with the cold precision of an actuary. The humans sense the presence of the predator long before they see it. It is a primal awareness, a prickling of the skin that has nothing to do with the cold. The sentries on the perimeter tighten their grip on their spears, their eyes darting nervously to the ridgelines. They smell the faint, musk-heavy scent of a carnivore carried on a shifting breeze, a smell that triggers a cascade of adrenaline in their blood. The formation instinctively tightens the spaces between individuals, shrinking until they are almost touching a reflexive hardening of the organism's shell against the external threat. The terrain begins to change the flat plains, giving way to a field of jagged ice shards and hidden crevasses, the remnants of a glacial collision. This is the broken ground, a nightmare of footing where a single misstep can send a human plummeting into a dark, freezing fissure. The pace slows to a crawl. The leader probes the snow ahead with a long pole, testing the weight-bearing capacity of the ice bridges. The silence is intense, magnified by the echo of the shifting ice, every crack and groan of the glacier sounding like a gunshot in the rarefied air. It is here in this labyrinth of unstable footing that the Homotherium makes its move. It does not come alone. From the shadows of the ice blocks, 3 other shapes emerge a pack. Unlike the solitary tigers of the future, these cats have learned that the megafauna of the Ice Age requires cooperative hunting. They fan out, moving with a fluid grace that mocks the stumbling humans flanking the column on both sides. They do not roar. They communicate with low, chuffing sounds below the register of the wind, coordinating their positions to cut off the retreat and the advance simultaneously. The attack begins not with a charge, but with a feint. The lead cat bursts from cover on the left flank, a blur of grey fur and flashing teeth, stopping just short of the spear range. The human sentries scream a guttural roar of intimidation, turning their weapons towards the threat, their formation shifting to present a wall of points to the left. It is exactly what the pack intended. As the human shield rotates, the formation stretches, a momentary gap appearing on the right flank, exposing the undefended back of a carrying female. In that split second of distraction, the second cat launches itself from the right.
Quickly, this way!
It is a missile of muscle and claw, hitting the line with the force of a battering ram. The impact is devastating. The formation shatters, bodies flying backward into the snow. The silence of the march is replaced by a chaotic cacophony of screams, the snarling of beasts, and the sickening crunch of bone. The humans scramble to reform, to close the breach, stabbing wildly at the grey shapes that weave through their ranks like smoke. The mother at the point of impact is knocked prone, the infant torn from her grasp by the violence of the fall. The bundle rolls across the ice, stopping precariously near the edge of a fissure. The mother scrambles on hands and knees, ignoring the cat that towers over her, her eyes fixed only on the child. A spearman throws himself between the beast and the woman, thrusting his weapon into the cat's shoulder. The beast roars, a sound that vibrates in the marrow of their bones, and swipes the man aside with a paw the size of a shovel, sending him skidding across the ice, blood spraying bright red on the white snow. The chaos is absolute but brief. The humans, driven by the desperate biological imperative to protect the core, rally, with a ferocity that surprises the predators. They form a smaller, tighter circle around the fallen mother and child, a hedgehog of spears and screaming voices. Firebrands are unlimbered from the carrying satchels, sparks flying into the wind as they are blown into life. The sudden flare of orange flame and the smell of burning fur confuses the cats, breaking their coordination. They are predators of the ice, and fire is an alien, terrifying element. The pack retreats, dissolving back into the white mist as quickly as they appeared, but they do not leave empty-handed. A straggler, a young male who had been on the outer perimeter, lies motionless on the snow, his neck broken by the initial charge. One of the cats drags the body away the carcass, leaving a wide red smear on the ice as a grim testament to the encounter. The humans do not pursue. They cannot. To break the circle again would be suicide. They stand panting, their breath coming in ragged gasps, their weapons pointed at the empty fog. The mother retrieves her infant frantically, unwrapping the furs to check for injury. The child is wailing a high, thin sound of terror, but it is alive, its limbs moving, its skin unbroken. The relief is washed away instantly by the realization of their reality. They look at the red trail disappearing into the distance, and then at the circle of eyes watching them from the periphery of their vision. The cats have not fled. They have merely reset the board. They have tested the prey, tasted the blood, and identified the strategy. The tribe gathers itself, the adrenaline fading to leave a cold, aching dread in its place. They are injured, they are tired, and they are one spear fewer than they were an hour ago. The landscape, once just a physical obstacle, has transformed into an active participant in their destruction, a killing floor designed to separate them and wear them down. The leader signals the move, his face a mask of grim resolve. They cannot stay here. The smell of blood will only draw more horrors from the void. They resume the march, but the formation is different now. It is tight and paranoid, the spacing non-existent. The mothers clutch their children with a grip that bruises their eyes wide and white-rimmed. They are no longer walking towards a destination. They are fleeing through a gauntlet. The sun begins to dip, lower the shadows, lengthening into grasping fingers that seem to pull at their ankles. The temperature begins its evening plummet, the wind picking up a fresh howling note. Above them, on a high ridge of ice, the Homotherium pack reappears, silhouetted against the dying light. They sit on their haunches, patient and terrible, watching the dark line of apes struggle through the snow. They know the night is coming. They know the humans are exhausted, and they know that the hunt has only just begun. The humans look up and see their executioners, and for the first time, the weight of the epoch settles fully upon their shoulders. This is not a journey, it is a war. The sun does not set in the Pleistocene, it surrenders. As the celestial disk touches the jagged horizon of the glacier, the light fails, rapidly sucked away by the curvature of the earth, leaving behind a sky the color of a bruised plum. The temperature, already critically low, begins a precipitous drop, plummeting 10 degrees in the span of an hour. The wind changes, its voice shifting from a dull roar to a high-pitched, keening wail that sounds suspiciously like a living thing in pain. This is the long night, the period of the diurnal cycle where the advantage shifts entirely from the visual hunters to the olfactory predators, and for the tribe it is the most dangerous time in the history of their migration. They choose their defensive position not for comfort, for there is none, but for tactical viability. A small depression in the lee of a granite outcrop offers 3 sides of exposure rather than 4, a geometric improvement that statistically increases their survival odds. There is no shelter here, no roof to hold back the stars that burn with a cold, hard brilliance in the black void above. The ground is permafrost, hard as iron, radiating a chill that seeps through the thickest fur mats within minutes. The tribe does not lie down. To sleep on this ground is to court hypothermia. Instead, they sit, creating a dense, interlocking mass of bodies, a hive of warmth where individual boundaries dissolve into a collective thermal unit. At the center of this huddle, the firekeepers perform the most important ritual of their existence. The embers carried from the sanctuary, nursed in the hollow horn, are spilled onto a meticulously arranged pile of dried moss and animal fat. The first smoke is thin and grey, whipped away instantly by the wind, but the keeper persists, shielding the spark with his own hands, his face inches from the tinder. He blows gently, a rhythmic transfer of oxygen that coaxes the dormant heat into a living flame. When the fire finally catches, leaping up with a snap of orange light, a collective sigh ripples through the group. This is not merely physics. It is the resurrection of their god, the only weapon they possess that the darkness fears. The fire grows fed by the last of their carried wood, and the splintered bones of long-dead mammoths scavenged from the ice. It creates a sphere of illumination, a fragile bubble of amber light pushing back against an ocean of blue-black shadows. Within this circle, the world is known, visible, and manageable. Beyond the flickering edge of the light, the world dissolves into the terrifying unknown, a void where the rules of physics are replaced by the laws of the nightmare. The humans crowd close to the flames, the heat searing their faces, while their backs remain frozen, existing in a harsh dichotomy of temperature that stresses their physiology to its limit. Out in the darkness, beyond the reach of the firelight, the Homotherium pack has arrived. They do not charge immediately. They are patient masters of the siege. They circle the perimeter of the light, their padded paws making no sound on the snow, their presence betrayed only by the sound of their breathing, a wet rasping noise that drifts in from different points of the compass. Occasionally, the firelight catches a pair of eyes, two glowing orbs of tapetum lucidum, reflecting the flames with a ghostly green iridescence. These floating eyes blink and vanish, only to reappear closer, tightening the noose around the camp. The psychological pressure is immense, a heavy, suffocating blanket of dread that weighs on the minds of the sentries. The defense is organized in shifts, a rotation of alertness that fights the biological imperative to sleep. 3 males stand at the edge of the light, their spears pointing outward into the gloom. They are the guardians of the threshold, the line where the light ends and the teeth begin. They shout periodically guttural, rhythmic chants designed to assert dominance, to tell the darkness that this space is occupied by something dangerous. They bang their spear shafts against the granite rock, the sharp clack, 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 echoing across the tundra, a man-made dissonance intended to disrupt the sensory acuity of the predators. But the wind swallows their voices, and the darkness absorbs their noise without an echo. Inside the circle, the mothers clutch the infants, covering the children's eyes to shield them from the terror of the flashing shadows. The babies are silent now, sensing the extreme tension in the bodies that hold them. The cortisol levels in the mother's blood are spiking, a chemical alarm system that keeps them wide awake, their muscles coiled for flight or fight. They prepare the secondary weapons, heaps of snow packed into hard balls to douse a flaming fur and sharp flakes of obsidian held ready in their hands. If the perimeter breaches, the defense will collapse inward and the battle will be fought over the inches of space, separating the predator's jaw from the child's throat. The attack when it comes is not a stealthy approach, but a sudden violent eruption of kinetic energy. The alpha cat, tired of the stalemate, roars a sound so deep it is felt in the chest cavity more than heard, and charges the weakest point of the light. It leaps over the outer perimeter of the fire, ignoring the heat that singes its belly fur, landing in the center of the camp like a grenade. The impact scatters the burning logs, sending a spray of sparks and hot ash into the air, momentarily blinding the defenders. The circle is broken. The sanctuary of the fire is violated. Chaos detonates within the bivouac. The humans scramble back, shouting in panic as the massive cat thrashes in their midst, its claws swiping wildly, catching fur and flesh indiscriminately. The sentries rush inward, abandoning the perimeter to deal with the intruder, turning their backs on the dark. This is the moment the rest of the pack was waiting for. 2 more cats surge from the shadows, hitting the exposed backs of the defenders. The camp transforms into a swirling melee of screaming apes and snarling beasts, illuminated by the erratic flashing of scattered embers and the pale moonlight. In the center of the storm, a mother finds herself isolated, separated from the main group by the thrashing body of the alpha cat. She holds her infant with one arm, pressing it into the fold of the rock, shielding it with her own body mass. A younger cat, sensing the isolation, lunges for her, its jaws gaping to target the neck. The woman does not scream. She reacts with a silent primal ferocity. She grabs a burning brand from the scattered fire, a thick limb of pine still flaming at the tip, and thrusts it directly into the face of the attacker. The biology of the beast overrides its hunger. The sensitive nose and eyes of the cat are seared by the sudden heat and light. It recoils, yowling in pain, shaking its head to rid itself of the burning sensation. The smell of singed hair mixes with the metallic scent of blood. The mother screams, now a raw, terrifying sound of aggression, swinging the firebrand like a club, creating a wall of sparks between her child and the monster. She is no longer prey. She is a force of nature wielding the very element that the animals fear most. Her action rallies the others. The sentries, realizing that their spears are ineffective in the close quarters, drop the shafts and grab the burning logs. They become a phalanx of fire, swinging the flames at the cats, shouting with a renewed, desperate energy. The predators, confused by the light, burned by the heat, and overwhelmed by the aggressive counterattack, lose their coordination. The alpha cat, struck on the flank by a burning branch, snarls and leaps back into the darkness. The others follow, dissolving into the shadows as quickly as they came, leaving behind the smell of fear and the heavy panting of the survivors. The tribe does not celebrate. They instantly regroup their movements, frantic and jerky. The men kick the scattered embers back into a pile, feeding the fire with a manic intensity, building the flames higher until they roar. The perimeter is re-established, tighter this time, the sentries standing shoulder to shoulder, their chests heaving, their eyes wide and bloodshot. They scan the darkness, but the eyes are gone. The pack has retreated, repelled not by strength of arm, but by the mastery of energy. The fire has saved them, but the cost is visible in the blood on the snow and the burns on their hands. Silence returns to the camp, but it is a different silence now. It is the silence of trauma and hypervigilance. No one sleeps. The injured tend to their wounds with handfuls of snow to numb the pain, gritting their teeth to keep from crying out. The mother who fought the cat sits trembling, the adrenaline crash, leaving her weak and nauseous. She unwraps the bundle in her arms. The child is awake, its eyes wide, reflecting the dancing flames of the fire. It reaches up a tiny pale hand, grasping the mother's soot-stained finger. The child is unharmed. The lineage remains unbroken. The rest of the night is an eternity of waiting. Every shift of the wind, every crack of the ice sends a ripple of tension through the group. They are exhausted, their caloric reserves dangerously low, their bodies battered by the cold and the combat. But they are alive. They watch the eastern horizon with a desperate hunger, praying to the indifferent universe for the return of the sun. They know that the predators are still out there, licking their wounds, watching, waiting for the fire to die. But the fire will not die. The tribe feeds it with their own possessions, spare furs, tool handles, anything that will burn. They are buying the dawn with the artifacts of their culture. Finally, the sky begins to grey. The stars fade, retreating before the pale wash of dawn light that creeps over the glacier. The black void turns to a deep, misty blue, revealing the vast emptiness of the tundra once more. The shapes of the rocks re-emerge, solid and real. The Homotherium are gone, vanishing with the shadows that birthed them. The sun rises, a cold yellow eye that offers no warmth but brings the gift of sight. The tribe stands stiff and aching, shaking the frost from their furs. They have survived the long night. They are still here. The dawn reveals the landscape with a cruel, high-definition clarity that strips away the ambiguity of the night. The sun, now fully detached from the horizon, casts long, stark shadows across the snow, highlighting every ridge and crevasse of the battlefield. The tribe stands in the center of their trampled bivouac, a circle of exhausted, soot-stained survivors blinking in the harsh light. But the revelation of the morning is not one of safety. It is the confirmation of a siege. On a rise of ice less than 200 meters away, the Homotherium pack waits. They are resting, licking their singed fur, their yellow eyes fixed on the humans with a terrifying patience. They know the apes are wounded. They know the fire is dead. They are simply waiting for the inevitable collapse of their prey's endurance. The humans assess their reality with a bleak mathematical precision that transcends panic. They have no wood left to build a new fire. They have no food to replenish the calories burned during the freezing night. The mothers are swaying on their feet, their energy reserves critically depleted by the thermal demands of lactation and the terror of the attack. To run is to die. The predators are faster, rested, and built for the chase. To stay is to die. The cold will claim them when the sun sets again. The biological imperative triggers a shift in the collective consciousness of the tribe. The fight or flight response is discarded for a third, strictly human option. They must change the rules of the engagement. The leader of the hunters, a scarred male whose graying hair marks him as a survivor of 4 decades, steps away from the huddle. He does not look at the predators. He looks at the earth. His mind, evolved to track patterns and predict cause and effect, begins to deconstruct the geometry of the terrain. He sees the glacier not as a surface, but as a weapon, To his left, the ice has sheared away, creating a narrow vertical bottleneck, a natural corridor between two towering walls of blue ice ending in a sharp drop-off. It is a funnel. In the mind of the ape, a synapse fires, connecting the geography to a hunting memory, transforming a landscape feature into a tactical advantage. He turns to the other males, his communication silent and subtle, a tilt of the head, a gesture of the hand, a widening of the eyes. There is no language for ambush or flanking maneuver, but there is a shared understanding of the hunt, a complex non-verbal syntax built over thousands of hours of stalking bison. The plan is disseminated through the group with the speed of a nervous impulse. The women and children will not be the protected core this time. They will be the bait. It is a gamble of breathtaking risk, violating every instinct to shield the young, but it is the only card they have left to play against a superior physical force. The tribe begins to move, but their formation is deliberately ragged, projecting the image of a broken, panicking herd. The mothers limp, noticeably clutching the bundles of the infants, trailing behind the males who appear to be fleeing in disarray towards the ice corridor. They create a tableau of weakness, a performance designed to trigger the predatory drive of the cats. The predators on the ridge watch the disintegration of the human line. Their instincts, honed by millions of years of chasing fleeing herbivores, scream that the prey is routing. The discipline of the pack dissolves into the excitement of the chase. The alpha stands, stretches his massive forelegs, and begins the lope down the slope. The humans enter the ice corridor, the walls rising 20 feet on either side, blocking out the sun and plunging them into a blue twilight. The floor is slick and uneven, littered with debris from the glacier above. The mothers and children hurry to the back of the funnel, scrambling up a steep, rocky incline that leads to a higher shelf, putting them out of immediate reach. The males, however, do not climb.
Brace yourselves!
They stop.
We fight now!
They turn. They press their backs against the ice walls, melting into the shadows, their bodies camouflaged by the gloom and their stillness. They plant the butts of their spears into the frozen cracks of the ground, angling the hardened wooden points upward at knee height. They become a part of the trap. The Homotherium pack hits the entrance of the corridor with the momentum of a freight train. They are running full tilt, their eyes fixed on the scrambling forms of the women on the high shelf, their focus entirely locked on the kill. They crowd into the narrow space, jostling for position, their speed unchecked. They do not see the males in the shadows until it is too late. The trap is not just the spears, it is the physics of the bottleneck. The cats cannot turn, cannot stop, and cannot spread out. They are funneled into a killing zone where their numerical advantage is nullified by the geometry of the ice. The first cat, a young male, runs directly onto the point of a spear held by the strongest hunter. The mechanics of the collision are brutal. The force of the beast's own momentum drives the fire-hardened wood deep into its chest, piercing the thick muscle and entering the thoracic cavity. The spear shaft snaps under the strain, but the damage is done. The cat screams a sound that echoes deafeningly in the confined space and collapses, creating a stumbling block for the pack behind it. The momentum of the charge is broken. The organized hunt descends into a chaotic pile-up of fur and claws in the blue twilight. Now the humans strike. This is not the desperate defensive flailing of the night before. This is cold, calculated butchery. The hunters step from the walls using their heavy stone hand axes and fresh spears. They target the confused, stalling predators with precision, striking at the eyes, the snouts, the spines. They work in pairs, one distracting a cat while the other drives a spear into its flank. The air in the corridor fills with the hot copper smell of blood and the roar of the dying beasts. The humans are shouting now, not in fear but in a unified rhythmic chant of aggression, pouring all their repressed terror into the swing of their weapons. The alpha male, bringing up the rear, realizes the trap. He tries to skid to a halt, his massive claws carving furrows in the ice. But the press of the pack pushes him forward into the meat grinder. He roars, swiping a human aside with a blow that cracks ribs and sends the man flying against the ice wall. The Alpha is a monster of the epoch, a creature of immense power, and even in the trap he is lethal. He lunges for the leader, his jaws gaping wide enough to crush a skull. This is the apex of the conflict, the dominant biology of the past, clashing with the dominant intellect of the future. The leader does not retreat. He drops to one knee, bracing his spear against the ground, the point angled directly at the charging beast's throat. It is a suicide maneuver relying entirely on the hope that the angle is perfect. The alpha descends his weight, driving him down onto the human. The spear catches the soft hollow of the throat just below the jaw. The wood groans, bending into a perilous arc, but it holds. The beast's weight drives the point upward, severing the major arteries. The man holds his ground, screaming with the effort, his muscles tearing as he supports the dying weight of the monster. For a moment, the tableau is frozen, the man and the beast locked in a fatal embrace, the breath of the predator washing over the face of the human. Then the light fades from the yellow eyes. The massive weight goes slack, sliding off the spear to the bloody ice with a wet thud. The alpha is dead. The remaining cats, witnessing the fall of their leader and the turning of the tide, break. The psychological bond of the pack shatters. They scramble over the bodies of their fallen kin, turning tail to flee back out of the corridor, back into the open tundra, away from the terrifying apes that fight with the ground itself. Silence crashes back into the corridor, heavy and absolute, broken only by the ragged breathing of the men and the drip of blood on the ice. The battle is over. The humans stand amidst the carnage, their chests heaving, their skin smeared with the blood of their enemies. They look at each other, their eyes wide, processing the magnitude of what has just occurred. They have not just survived, they have dominated. They have used the abstract concepts of the mind trap lever bottleneck to defeat the supreme physical adaptations of the predator. It is a crossing of a threshold, a moment where the species graduates from scavenger to apex contender. The mothers descend from the high shelf, stepping carefully over the carcasses. They move to the men, checking wounds, touching faces, reaffirming the reality of their survival. The infants are silent, watching with wide, uncomprehending eyes. The tribe gathers around the body of the alpha. There is no gloating, only a solemn recognition of the transfer of power. The hunter who killed the beast places his hand on the cooling flank, feeling the fading warmth. This is no longer a monster. It is a resource. It is meat. It is fur. It is life for the journey ahead. They begin the work immediately. The adrenaline fades, replaced by the grim necessity of harvest. Stone tools are produced, the sharp flakes of flint slicing through the tough hide of the homotherium. They strip the furs first, wrapping the bloody pelts around themselves, layering the warmth of the predator over their own shivering skin. They carve out the heart, the liver, the energy-rich fat, consuming it raw on the spot. The energy transfer is immediate and visceral. The strength of the beast flows into the blood of the tribe. The predator has become the fuel for the prey's survival. The sun climbs higher, illuminating the mouth of the corridor, where the snow is now stained a brilliant, shocking crimson. The tribe is transformed. They look different now, clothed in the skins of their enemies, their bellies full, their weapons tested. The fear that defined their existence for the last 24 hours has evaporated, replaced by a hardened, crystalline confidence. They know now that they can kill the dark. They know that the mind is sharper than the tooth. The landscape is still hostile, the ice is still cold, but they are no longer victims of it. They gather their supplies heavier now with the weight of the meat, but the burden feels light. The wounded limp, but they do not lag. The leader retrieves his spear, pulling it from the throat of the alpha. The tip is broken, stained, dark, but he keeps the shaft. It is a totem, a memory, a proof of concept. He points it towards the exit of the gorge, towards the open plains that lie beyond. The migration must continue. The season does not wait for their victory. As they step out of the shadow of the trap and back into the sunlight, the wind hits them again, but they do not cower. They lean into it. The formation reforms the mothers and children in the center, the hunters on the perimeter, but the posture is different. They walk with heads up, scanning the horizon not with dread but with ownership. The surviving cats of the pack watch from a distant ridge, silhouettes against the sky, but they do not follow. They have learned a new law of the tundra. The naked apes are not to be hunted. The journey ahead is still long, the winter is still deep, and the world is still vast and indifferent. But the tribe carries a new weapon with them, invisible and weightless. They carry the knowledge of their own agency. They have looked into the face of extinction and broken its jaw. The infant, wrapped now in the fur of the very beast that tried to eat it, sleeps soundly against its mother's chest, rocked by the confident rhythm of the march. The future has been secured not by claws but by the spark of thought. The aftermath of the violence brings a silence that is profound and heavy, differing vastly from the terrified quiet of the night. It is the silence of saturation of a world temporarily filled to the brim with event and consequence. The sun, now high and brilliant in the southern sky, illuminates the massacre with a clinical indifference, glistening off the red slush of the melting ice and the steaming viscera of the fallen predators. The wind has dropped, as if the atmosphere itself is pausing to catch its breath after the fury of the morning.
Be still.
The tribe sits amidst the ruins of the battle, a circle of battered victors resting on the very carcasses of the monsters that hunted them. This is the moment of decompression where the biological imperative shifts from acute combat stress to the restoration of social homeostasis. The adrenaline that fueled their muscles begins to metabolize out of their systems, leaving behind a deep, aching exhaustion that seeps into the marrow. They do not speak. The language of this moment is entirely tactile. They huddle together, engaging in intense bouts of grooming fingers, working through matted fur and hair, removing burrs, dried blood and ice. This is not merely hygiene, it is the chemical rebonding of the organism. The touch triggers the release of oxytocin in their brains, the hormone of attachment that soothes the neural pathways of fear and reaffirms the cohesion of the group. The feast that follows is a primal celebration of energy transfer, a direct reclamation of the calories stolen by the cold. They eat with a focused, grim dedication, consuming the raw, nutrient-dense organs of the homotherium while they are still warm. There is no fire to cook the meat, nor is there time. The heat of the animal is a fleeting resource that must be harvested immediately. The liver, rich in vitamins, is given to the mothers. The heart, a dense muscle of protein, is shared among the hunters. It is a graphic, bloody communion, a physical acknowledgement that in the unforgiving math of the Pleistocene, life thrives only by consuming life. Amidst this scene of carnage and consumption, the infants are the focal point of a tenderness that stands in stark contrast to the surrounding gore. The mothers, their faces smeared with the blood of the kill, look down at the bundles in their arms with expressions of fierce, exhausted love. They open their furs to the cold air for brief moments to nurse the milk flowing freely now that the mothers have fed. The babies, oblivious to the desperate violence that secured their breakfast, suckle contentedly, their tiny hands kneading the rough skin of the women. This juxtaposition, the bloody muzzle of the predator and the soft pink face of the child, encapsulates the entire duality of the human experience in this era. The wounded are tended to with a crude but effective pragmatism. The man whose ribs were cracked by the alpha's blow is bound tightly with strips of raw hide, which will shrink as they dry, forming a natural cast to stabilize the bone. Deep scratches are packed with clean snow to numb the pain and staunch the bleeding, then covered with daubs of clay found in the crevasse. There is no guarantee of survival for the injured. Infection is a slow, invisible predator that kills as surely as the wolf. But they are not abandoned. The tribe distributes the weight of the packs, relieving the wounded of their burdens, adjusting the pace of the inevitable march to accommodate the slowest among them. It is here, in this refusal to leave the weak behind, that the true nature of their species reveals itself. In the animal kingdom, the injured are liabilities, often left to the wolves to preserve the integrity of the herd. But the tribe operates on a different algorithm. They understand with a nascent intuitive wisdom that the strength of the group lies not just in muscle, but in number and memory. The elder with the limp knows where the water is hidden in the drought. The injured hunter knows how to nap the flint. To discard them is to discard the library of their survival. They carry the wounded just as they carry the young, weaving a safety net of empathy that defies the cruel logic of the ice. The processing of the kill concludes. They cannot carry the entire carcasses. The weight would be fatal in the deep snow. They take only the best parts, the furs, the fat, the sinew, and the choice cuts of meat. The rest is left for the scavengers, a tithe paid to the ecosystem that sustains them. The bones of the homotherium are cracked open, the rich marrow sucked out to fuel the next leg of the journey. The skulls are left on the ice, stripped and staring, a silent warning to any other pack that might trail them. Here walks something dangerous. Here walks something that bites back. The leader stands testing the wind once more. The scent of the storm has passed, replaced by the crisp, clean smell of high-pressure ozone. The path ahead, leading out of the broken ground and into the broad, sweeping valley beyond, is clear. The migration must continue. They are not settlers. They are nomads driven by the seasonal rhythm of the herds they follow. To stop is to starve. He signals the departure, and the tribe rises, groaning as stiff muscles protest, but they stand upright. They are heavier now, draped in the skins of their enemies, their bellies full, their eyes clear. They move out, leaving the red stain of the battlefield behind them. The formation is restored, but it flows with a new confidence. The mothers no longer walk with the terrified scuttle of prey. They stride with the assurance of those who are protected by the deadliest predators on the plains, their own kin. The infants, lulled by the motion and the warmth of the full bellies, sleep deeply. They are the silent passengers of history, unaware that their survival today has shifted the trajectory of life on Earth. They are the seeds of a dominion that will one day stretch far beyond the ice. The camera of history pulls back, widening its aperture to place this small band of wanderers in the context of their world. They are a tiny dark thread weaving through a tapestry of white. To the east, a herd of 10,000 bison darkens the snow, a river of life moving south. To the west, the great glaciers grind against the mountains, reshaping the continents with the slow violence of geology. The humans are insignificant in size, lacking the armor of the rhino or the teeth of the cat. They are soft, slow, and fragile. And yet they are the most formidable force on the landscape because they possess the weapon of cooperation. As they march, the sun begins its descent again, casting their shadows long across the tundra. These shadows stretch out before them, reaching toward the horizon, toward the future. The footprint of a human child impressed into the snow is a temporary mark. The wind will rise in an hour and scour it away. The snow will fill the depression, erasing the evidence that they ever walked here. But the true imprint is not in the ice. It is in the genetic code carried within the warm bundles. It is an unbroken chain of life that will outlast the glaciers, outlast the saber-toothed cats, and outlast the silence of the Pleistocene. The defense of the young has become the architect of their intelligence. Because the child is helpless, the tribe must be strong. Because the child needs warmth, the fire must be tamed. Because the child needs years to learn, the elders must survive to teach. The vulnerability of the infant is not a weakness. It is the evolutionary pressure that forced the ape to become human. It is the engine of their complexity. Every spear thrust, every fire kindled, every act of sacrifice during the long night was dictated by the needs of the small sleeping things that cannot yet lift their heads. The tribe crests the final ridge and looks down into the valley. It is green in the lower reaches, sheltered from the wind, dotted with trees and the dark shapes of grazing animals. It is the sanctuary they have sought for weeks. A murmur runs through the group, a sound of relief and anticipation. The infants stir, sensing the change in the energy of the mothers. One of them cries out a thin, reedy sound that drifts over the vast landscape. It is a small sound, easily swallowed by the wind, but it is the sound of victory. It is the declaration that the lineage has endured the filter of the ice. They begin the descent, moving faster, now drawn by the promise of rest and safety. The snow crunching under their feet is the only sound in the vast stillness. They are the ancestors of billions, the bottleneck through which the entire future of the species is passing. They do not know this. They know only that the sun is warm on their faces, the pack is heavy on their backs, and the child is safe in their arms. They walk on into the teeth of the era undefeated. The view expands one last time, soaring high above the valley, turning the humans into specks, then into dust, then into nothingness, against the majesty of the planet. The ice sheets glow with a blue ethereal light. The wind howls over the peaks, singing the eternal song of the earth. The tracks are gone. The fires are cold. But the spark that was carried through the storm continues to burn, hidden within the blood marching inexorably toward the dawn of a new age. The ice remains, but the humans have stayed.
Hold firm. Angle down. Yes. That is good work.